Hello and welcome to Chile Talk. I'm Neil Davidson. I'm with Pete Lee and with some bread, because today's topic is in fact bread, of which the Chileans believe themselves to be pretty much champion eaters, I think, Pete.
Oh, the Chileans certainly are champion eaters, certainly by Latin American standards. Chileans, at the latest measure, consume 86 kilos of bread per person per year, which is far and away higher than their neighbours. Argentinians consume just under 50 kilos of bread per person per year.
I see. And by world standards?
By world standards, well, it's modest compared to the really large bread eaters. Turkey, number one. Bulgaria's up there. In Turkey, it's almost 200 kilos of bread per year.
That's impressive. 4 kilos a week almost.
Yes,
it's quite a kilo a day.
It's quite a restriction. Yes.
Because you see here, people, they care about their bread. We have a nice, good bakery on the corner, a corner shop where they bake bread, and a queue will form at about 1:30 when the fresh bread is coming out of the oven. People do care about it being fresh and hot and stuff.
People do care. People are knowledgeable. People have their expectations and their favourite bakeries, which is very interesting. The production of wheat in Chile has had an important role in the development of the Chilean economy. Wheat was exported from colonial Chile first to the vice-regal capital in Peru.
I see.
Following a major earthquake in 1687, Chile established the exportation of wheat, and very crucial exportation of wheat to what is now Peru.
I see. I suppose it would have shipped it by sea. I was thinking it's probably not very economical to take it over land, yeah?
Being careful to maintain the integrity, avoid moisture.
Of course.
And in fact, the great Chilean writer, about whom we've spoken before, Benjamin Vicuña Mackenna, actually described the period from a great earthquake in the Lima area in 1687 until independence from 1810 as the century of wheat.
Huh.
Yes, before that it was the century of suet, because siglo de cebo, because Chile would collect the animal fat from slaughtered animals and export that to Lima primarily.
So when you say suet, you mean suet, in England it means kidney fat?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, I see, because I thought only the English actually used it. I mean, I heard the story of some English woman who married an African villager in a village where they used every single part of the animal except the suet, because they couldn't work out what to do with it.
Yes.
And she showed them how to make steak and kidney pudding or something. But you're saying that in Chile, that this is important in other cultures?
They were actually exporting suet within the Viceroyalty of Peru, and it was an important source of income.
I see, I had no idea. Another great Chilean resource to line up alongside saltpeter and copper.
Yes, and the Peruvians are very good at making
suet,
pastries
and they use suet.
Yes, traditionally.
Right.
Manteca, which is
just lard.
In general.
Yeah.
So Chile, it was very important, and even during the great gold rushes, such as in California and in Australia, Chile was exporting a lot of wheat to those gold fields to meet demand.
Interesting, a bit of a breadbasket then. Yeah.
Yes.
And so Chileans do believe themselves to have a special relationship with bread.
Yes.
There's a saying in Chile, más malo que una berenjena, like as bad or worse, as bad as an aubergine.
Yes.
It's considered to be the type of bad, uneatable food. And then a person could be más bueno que el pan, meaning nicer, kinder, gooder, better than bread.
Yes.
That's the image of bread. It's just sheer goodness. It's just
yes, it's sort of unproblematically celebrated in Chilean history. During the colonial period, there seems to be some connection with the Moorish heritage in Spain and the making of bread. And in fact, one of the breads that seems to reflect that Spanish tradition albeit now in a white form rather than traditional more wholemeal forms, is this one.
The ayuya.
The ayuya.
And I never knew why it was called an ayuya, and I still don't, and I hope you do.
Well, it's interesting because there are several different etymologies.
Because it's got A-double-L-U-double-L-A.
Yes, it's a fairly elaborate word, and it would seem to reflect a bread that existed in Spain during the Reconquista by the Christians of Spain, I should guess. Ha-lulon.
All right.
Or ha-lulon, depending on who's speaking, was a kind of bread that was available in what was called Andalus, the Moorish presence.
Andalus, yes.
Yes.
The Moorish kind of statelet, as it were.
And the name would appear to come from there. It also exists in Bolivia, and there are a number of Arabic words that come from the same etymology. Alon, alun, there are various ones. Some people sometimes confuse the word with the Hebrew word challah, which is a loaf, such as the loaf that Jews will eat during their Seder, their family Friday night dinner, but it's not from that root, it's from an Arabic root.
I see, because this is fairly dense bread.
Yes.
It's not unleavened, but they've gone very easy on the yeast, haven't they?
Yes, and in the south of Chile, where it's perhaps most iconic, around Concepcion and further south, there's usually quite a lot of lard of some sort in there, making quite a substantial
That's right.
bread.
That's right.
The best ones I've ever
It's
had.
kind of flat and very round. I think you've already seen it.
Yes. The best examples I've ever had were actually in Coyhaique in Aysén, which is a
really?
very isolated place. And it's
In
a heavy bread.
Patagonia.
Yes.
Yeah.
A very heavy bread, a very substantial bread. Here in the central zone around Santiago, it can often be quite like a scone, actually, I find. A salty scone.
I know what you mean. Yes, I see what you mean. Actually.
Without the same density as elsewhere. So that's one of the classic breads that we have. But
that's right. Yeah.
during the 19th century, there was a lot of development of bread technology.
That's right, and especially with influences from abroad. One of them being, of course, French bread.
Absolutely, and French bread was revolutionised itself in the post-Napoleonic period, or the inter-Napoleonic period, depending on how many Napoleons you want to count. When bakers from Vienna arrived in places such as Paris and introduced Viennese baking techniques, including the steam oven, which allowed a much more crusty crust to form on the different breads.
So, wait a minute. So, just as all the food we associate with Italy, tomatoes, pasta, whatever, all came from China or from America, and heaven knows what they actually ate before then, before they ate Italian food, you're saying that the kind of French stuff like baguette is of Viennese origin.
The modern form, the modern glassy crusted baguette. Of course, the croissant also from Vienna. And Viennese bakers were very famous, very good at milling flour, and also perhaps through influence with the Ottoman Empire, of course, were real connoisseurs of bread.
Right, we're back to the global heartland of bread. You're telling me that Turkey, the Anatolia. Yeah.
One of the most important sources of bread. And anyway, in France, the crusty, glassy baguette comes from that period. This is the Chilean.
Okay, because this is what
result.
This is what here in Santiago is called una marraqueta, but in the south of Chile it's called pan francés, French bread.
Absolutely, and in fact,
and it's a bit different. But yeah.
Yes, it's a bit different. It's not quite as glassy. This is a fairly glassy skinned and very fresh
specimen.
Specimen. Now, this bread was actually introduced, as far as we know, in Valparaiso by a pair of French brothers, the brothers Marraquet.
Right.
And they called their bread pan batido.
Okay, beaten bread.
Beaten
Or
bread.
whipped bread or whatever that would be.
Bread that had been whipped up and in fact has a very soft inner.
Got it.
That's rather lovely. They called the class of bread pan batido, and they still do in Valparaiso.
I see.
Also, this, 4 units, you might see there are little bullet-shaped sections, and there's 4 of them. All 4 together is called a pan batido in Valparaiso, and traditionally.
I see. Whereas here in Santiago, that would be 2 maraquetas.
Yes.
So each double one is 1 maraqueta. But there's some confusion about that now. If you go in my corner shop, before coronavirus, you would just go in and help yourself to the bread, put it in the bag and wait. Now there's no contact like that, so you have to get the assistant to give you bread. And I discovered that when I asked for 2 maraquetas, she's not sure if I mean 1 of those or 2 of those.
Yes.
So the culture, these kind of little, these little connecting things, this glue of society, which is certain codes and things mutually in Chile, as everywhere, are kind of breaking down, and everything has to be reinvented from scratch.
Yes, they are breaking down. Although in Valparaiso, I think it's still largely observed that is a pan batido, and half of it is a maraqueta, which is a sandwich unit. That you'd make a sandwich out of 2 pieces.
Okay, so that is also 1 maraqueta in Valparaiso.
So that's an interesting datum about this bread. There are many kinds of bread in Chile in general. There's the whole class called pan amasado,
right,
which is country-style bread essentially.
Which just means kneaded bread.
Yes,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Kneaded bread, and probably the most famous example of that, or the most iconic example of that, is pan de lota.
All right, which I don't actually know.
Well, that's a mining town near Concepcion, where the wives of the miners would make a large loaf of bread, particularly nice in a communal oven, essentially, to feed the men. That's a very nice bread. There are other styles that have quite high amounts of fat in them, almost pastries. Dobladita is an example of that.
That's right.
And more and more, there's more and more influence from other parts of the world. Some styles, such as pita bread, bread's still at a primitive stage in Chile, I think.
Very much an imported thing still,
yes.
Very much a graft. What you didn't see much in the past was wholemeal bread, at least when I say the recent past that I'm familiar with.
Yes, there's wholemeal bread, and
that is coming back now. Obviously, the usual health reasons, I suppose, and changing taste as well.
Yes, especially high-end supermarket chains will sell German-style breads.
That's right. But in Chile, because I assume that at one time it was eaten natively in Chile. But I remember this comment that Lawrence Dorrell makes in his book Bitter Lemons of Cyprus, that he was a diplomat in Cyprus in the 1950s. And at that time, white bread had just been introduced to the island fairly recently. And of course, swept all before it. He said, a beggar wouldn't take brown bread from you now at that time.
Yes.
He wouldn't stoop so low. So I guess everywhere when white bread was introduced, it just blew people away completely.
Yes.
And then you get a bit sick of it and you want to eat wholemeal bread again. That's a kind of sophistication of taste to go back to the more rustic thing, I guess, which is now kind of happening in Chile as well.
Yes, well, Chileans do have intact a wonderful connoisseurly tradition surrounding mostly white bread.
Yeah.
Which is great. People have their preferences.
That's right.
And
they know when it's good and when it's bad.
Yes. It must be fresh. After a day, it's good only for breadcrumbs or even throwing out.
Well, it's certainly the stuff you buy from your local bakery certainly does not contain much in the way of preservatives, because it is very hard by the next day already.
Yes.
That's right.
So bread is very interesting. One of the interesting styles that's come here recently is called the colisa, which is associated with Peru.
The colisa.
Yes. It's almost focaccia-like bread. It's about the size of an ayuya normally, and it has 2 levels. It has a focaccia-like quality, very nice.
Uh-huh. And of course, bread is the basis of another great Chilean institution, which is the sandwich. And the Chilean sandwich is something very special. I think we're going to talk about that on some future occasion. And that's it really. And I think you were commenting that Chilean bread expertise is very much limited to bread as such, doesn't extend to, for example, pizza pastry or...
Well, yes, we'll have to talk about Chileans and pizza in the future. Some of the pastry can be all right, but pizza is moving reasonably slowly.
Okay, it's not in the fast lane of development in Chile.
No.
Alrighty, well there we are, our quick introduction to Chilean bread. Thank you for listening.
Thanks.
I think that should pass muster.
Yeah, like